Well, welcome everyone. I know we'll still be receiving more people coming in, but I'll welcome you in, and I'd like to start off with the acknowledgement to territories. So I just want to start off by acknowledging and thanking the Algonquin people, also known as the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nation communities, for allowing us to live, work, and play on their lands. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, the traditional territory of the Sunamuk First Nation. I, as well, would like to acknowledge all the ceded and unceded territories in British Columbia, for which you all may live, work, and play. Too many to go through right now. Let's give thanks to the ancestors, the supernatural ones, hereditary leaders, matriarchs, creatures big and small, for looking after the rich resources and cultural teachings of this beautiful land. Okay, I'm sure most of you have heard Myles Himmelreich, heard of him and his work with FASD, and we are honored to have him present today for us. Yeah, thank you. Take it away, Myles.
All right, so is my volume okay? Yeah, okay. So in the bottom, there is a chat icon. So if you have a question or a comment, or even if you just need me to speak up, just put your message in there. We're gonna have a break around 11. And so if you can hold on till then to do any bathroom breaks or coffee breaks or anything. And then we'll go over the questions. And Jan's going to keep track of the questions, and then we will get to them either right after the break or at the very end. Okay, so, and I think that's that. So my name is Myles, and I live in, where do I live? Nanaimo, BC. So it's a beautiful place. It's really nice. We moved here in March of this last year. So it was quite a big change this last year with moving and then the whole COVID thing and all of that. And so that's been really interesting. One of the things that I do is I am a motivational speaker, but I'm also a trainer and consultant for working with kids and adults with disabilities, specializing in fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And I myself have FASD, and so I quite often will use the experiences in my life to kind of to be able to share with others what it's like to live with FASD. And so I try to be very aware of what experiences I'm having in my life. And definitely COVID has been one of those experiences that I tried to be really self-conscious of how I'm handling it and dealing with it and stuff like that. So we'll speak about that a little bit more later on today. But to start off, we'll start off from the beginning because that's usually a good place to start. So I was born in Calgary, and when I was born, I weighed, I think it was 3 pounds. So I was pretty small as a child, and I had a lot of health issues. So the first little bit, I was staying in the hospital, and then I returned home with my mom. And at that time, I had 2 older brothers that were about 5 or 6 years older than me. And so there's myself, my 2 brothers, and my mom. When I returned home, I would be with my mom, and because of the health concerns, there was some questions on if I was going to be able to be taken care of properly at home. I'm guessing the hospital or the social worker somehow decided that they need to be involved to make sure that the safety and health of myself and my brothers was being looked at. So after being home for a couple of weeks, I returned back to the hospital. Eventually was, they said that I had acute failure to thrive. So I wasn't really eating, I wasn't really drinking any milk or anything like that. And a big part of that was due to the environment that I was in back home. So we had a social worker that became involved with our family, and she would come to wherever we were staying at that time to do visits. They decided that the place we were staying at wasn't a place that was good for children to be in. And I guess they decided that my mom wasn't in a place to be able to take care of us either at that time. So we were apprehended, my brothers and I, and we were put into a foster home. We stayed at that foster home for about a week or so, and then ended up returning back home with my mom. The first 2.5 years of my life were spent going from being with my mom, going to the hospital, staying there, going back to my mom, going to a foster home, staying in that foster home for a couple days, couple weeks, back to my mom. In the first 2.5 years, I was in, I think it was something like 8 or 9 different foster homes. And so when I was living with my mom, we moved probably about 10 or so times in that first 2 years of my life. So there wasn't any consistency. Our environment was constantly changing, and my family was constantly changing. It's very hard to understand who mom and dad are when this week it's Mr. and Mrs. Jones or the mom and dad, and then this week it's Shirley, and then this week it's a different family. And so I ended up getting attachment disorder, because how do I ever attach to anyone if nobody's sticking around for more than a couple weeks? I continued to still struggle with some health issues as a small child. And one day, one of the social workers that we had, again, too, in that first 2 years of my life, we had probably 5 or 6 different social workers. Part of that was due to the turnover. Part of that was due to us moving different areas. And so that too made it difficult, because you had some social workers that maybe weren't familiar with the file. You had some social workers that maybe didn't have all the information. And so you had this new social worker coming in and taking these children from their home and placing them into another home. It was really difficult because it was hard on my brothers, it was hard on myself, and it was hard on my mom. Now, when we look at, kind of what's the best thing for the child, what's the best way to support and help a child, I honestly believe there's no one answer, right? And so understanding that the environment we were in wasn't the safest environment. We were staying in broken down motels, we were staying in basement suites, we were staying wherever we could. And the people that my mom was surrounding herself with at the time were heavily involved in drugs and alcohol. My birth father actually was a member of a biker gang. And so I quite often think that that's where I got my bad boy side from. There's times where I've jaywalked. I know, pretty bad, but I blame that on my dad. I think it's inherited. Anyways, so here was this environment that we're in, filled with drugs and alcohol, and a lot of neglect. I mean, people aren't necessarily watching out for the children. That's not their first priority when you're dealing with drugs and alcohol. And so one day, the newest social worker came over to wherever we were staying and found myself and my 2 brothers home alone. Now, again, I was 2.5 years old, and my brothers were about 5 years older than me. So certainly not old enough to be left home alone. So we were taken out of that home. This time we were split up. My two brothers went to live on a farm in Bowden, Alberta, and I went to live at a foster home in Calgary, Alberta. I was kind of getting used to this routine of moving place to place. So I go into this home and, kind of again, okay, we'll see how long we're here kind of thing. And I meet the foster mom and I meet a few of the kids that they have there. And when I was meeting with the kids, it was, all this excitement. There's a new kid in the house, and I was, just this little kid running around. And I was a little bit shy, but happy to see these other kids to play with. And I guess it was not out of the norm, but the foster dad of the family comes home, and the mom goes, "Oh, hey, I went out and got some groceries, and we have a new kid in the house also." And I guess that's not of a norm because they fostered kids quite often, had kids coming and going out of the house there. And so it was a house that was filled with a lot of activities, a lot of love. And it was something that I really hadn't experienced, to be in a home with so many other kids, as well as being in a home where you constantly were doing stuff and you're kind of connecting as a family, right? When I was with my family, I know my mom loved me and she hugged me and held me and kissed me, but that quality time as a family really wasn't there due to the environment that we were in. So it was a new environment for me. Now, today is September 9th. It is International FASD Day. And so I always say I get excited about this day because to me, it's a day of celebration. So I would like to wish you all happy FASD Day. As I tell you a little bit about my journey, you will see and hopefully understand the ups and downs that I experienced, but also too, hopefully you'll be able to see why I now celebrate this day. Why, for me and many of my friends and colleagues, this is a day that we look forward to and that we're happy about. I think one of the biggest things that can be, people say, why would you celebrate this, right? And I think that's because of the stigma and the shame and blame that is out there with FASD. That stigma and shame and blame comes from lack of information and from wrong information. When we don't know about something or we don't understand it, we're not as open to talking about it. And if we have a little bit of information and it's not the right information, but we keep getting fed that information long enough, we'll believe it's the right information. And I think that's something that's definitely happened in the world of FASD. There's a lot of misinformation. And so today I'm hoping to be able to share with you how that misinformation led to lack of supports and understanding, and how people saw me and saw FASD. So the very first example I have of that actually is when I was in this foster home. I ended up being there for a couple of years, and that's the longest I've been in any one home. I started kind of getting used to what their routine was, what the structure at the home was. And at that point, I hadn't seen my mom or dad since I was apprehended, and I hadn't seen my brothers except for maybe once or twice we had a visit, and that was it. So one day, the foster parents, Brian and Christine, they sit me down in the living room, and this is a little bit before kindergarten. And so here I was 5 or so years old, and they said to me, what do you think about being part of our family? And I was like, well, I thought I am. And they said, well, you are, but we would like to adopt you. And so they kind of explained it to me that they would be my family and that would be my mom and dad, and that, you know, they would still help me connect with my biological family when I got older, if it was a healthy environment. They were very open and honest about that, about who I was, where I came from, about my biological family, all of that. And so I always really appreciated that about them. So I thought, so this will be my mom and my dad, and these will be my brothers and sisters, and I'll stay here for a while. Now, I know you're adopted, you're a part of this family, it's going to be your now forever family kind of thing. And I wish I could have believed and felt that 100%, but I never could. And that was due to my attachment disorder. Brian and Christine would go through the adoption process, and finally the judge decided that due to the lack of proper environment and support that my mom had, the best place for me to be at that time was with Brian and Christine. So he granted the adoption. So here's my new mom and dad, Brian and Christine. And they loved me and they cared for me and they took care of me. They gave me the things I didn't have. They gave me a safe environment. They gave me food, clothing, love, all of these things that I needed as a child. But unfortunately, I would, for many, many years, have this almost internal battle where I would say to my mom and dad, hug me, hold me, love me, but don't touch me. Because I always felt you're going to leave me too, because everybody does. I believed that the reason everybody left was something was wrong with me, because the only one constant in all of those situations with all of those foster families was me. So obviously there had to be something wrong with me if nobody wanted to keep me. So by the time I get to this family that, they're saying we want to keep you, it was hard to believe that and feel that they would stick around. So as we go through the adoption process, we get the paperwork done, everything like that, my dad takes me up to our family doctor and he says, so we've got this young boy here that we're in the process of adopting, and we'd like to, know how to best support him. We know he has what at the time was the diagnosis of FAS, Fetal Alcohol Syndrome. So back then, there was FAE, Fetal Alcohol Effects, and FAS, Fetal Alcohol Syndrome. So I was diagnosed with FAS/FAE. And so they, I believe, were looking at the diagnosis of FAE at that time with the doctor. The difference back then was if you had certain facial features and they knew that there was alcohol intake during the pregnancy, you were diagnosed with FAS, Fetal Alcohol Syndrome. If they knew there was alcohol intake during the pregnancy, but you didn't have certain facial features, you were diagnosed with FAE, Fetal Alcohol Effects. The big struggle with that was that people such as myself that didn't point out the facial features on, everything that I would go through over the next few or many years of my life was seen as behavior, right? And so I had a sister in my family who also was adopted, and she has full FAS. When she was born, she weighed 1 pound. She is in her mid-30s, but developmentally around 8. The expectations on her is that she'll be at home and play and have fun, right? And just live life and be happy. The expectations on me were that I would go through school, that I would finish school, graduate, go to college, university, get a career, have a family, live independently, do all of these things, be a member of society. We have the same diagnosis. We both have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. But simply because my sister looks a certain way, the expectations on her are different than they are on me. Everything that I did was seen as a behavior. And so what we do in our lives as a society is, especially with FASD, we see the behavior, we automatically jump to, sorry, I know we have some new people entering. Sorry, you muted everybody, including me. Was that a subtle hint? Thanks. No, so yeah, we're just muting everyone so that there's no feedback. Anyways, so for myself throughout school and throughout many experiences in my life, the things that I did was seen as it's a behavior, and then people jump to it's a bad behavior, and then they jump straight to punishment. Were the things I was doing, the way that I reacted to things, behavior? Yeah, could be. But we need to look at where the behavior is coming from and how to support that behavior and support that person rather than jump to punishment. Because that's what happened to me my whole life was, well, it's a behavior, it's bad behavior, punish him. And that punishment would look different. You know, sometimes it was suspension, being expelled, being grounded, being fired, not having friends, you know, whatever it was, this punishment was how I was supposed to learn. With the diagnosis of FAE, fetal alcohol effects at that time, my dad is looking at the family doctor saying, you know, he has FAE, what does this mean? And they want to know because they want to know how to support me, how to care for me, and what this disability means. Because at that time, there was very little information and they didn't know anything really about FASD. So he looked to the doctor. As we all do in our society, we look to doctors to know about every medical thing, right? We're not going to go to the milkman and say, hey, so can you tell me about diabetes? No, we would go to a doctor. The doctor looks at my dad and says, well, you see, that means that he's going to have problems with reading and writing, and it means he'll have a small head. And that's it. My dad looked at the doctor and goes, okay, we'll buy him a small hat, but like what else? That's it? Like he'll have problems with reading and writing and buy him a small hat? So that is all the information that my parents had to go on in regards to how to support an individual with FASD, in regards to how to deal with such things as my developmental versus chronological age, processing, the dysmaturity, the concrete abstract thinking, the cause and effect, the confabulation, the sensory issues, all of these things that I'm going to go through later on. Oh, it's okay, he'll just struggle with reading and writing and have a small head. So here we go, I've got this new family, I've got this diagnosis, that means, whatever, I don't know. Whenever in my life things would change or I'd have a new experience or even enter a new environment, I really started to grasp onto those things, because throughout my life, it would seem to be that things were okay for a bit, then they'd get tough, then they would change, and then they'd be okay for a bit, then they'd get tough again. And so I thought, this is where things are going to get better. Here I am now, adopted, I've got this new family, new start, new environment, things are going to be good. Around the time that the adoption was going through, my mom and dad sat me down and they said, so, you know, you've got this new family, kind of a new start. What do you think about a new name? And I was like, huh. And they're like, you can pick a whatever name you want, you can pick it. And I was like, okay. So here I am, 5 or 6 years old. This is back in the 80s. So any of you that know the time in the 80s, that was when the best cartoons were on. And I loved watching cartoons. That's what we do all the time, is watch all these awesome cartoons. We would watch, you know, Transformers and G.I. Joe and not Strawberry Shortcake. I didn't watch it, my sister. And maybe I was in the room, whatever. But anyways, so we'd watch all these really cool cartoons. So here I am getting to pick my own name. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to pick one from one of my favorite cartoons. I go think about it for a bit, and I'm like, Now, with the adoption, my new last name is Himmelreich. And loosely translated in German, it means heavenly kingdom. So it's pretty awesome last name. When I was born, I was given the name Terry. Now, one of the health issues I have is hearing loss. And so when I went into this home, their oldest biological son, his name was Carrie. And so sometimes it's hard to differentiate between the two names. Except I was, constantly in trouble. They'd be like, Terry. I'd be like, oh, they called you Carrie. I heard that clearly. It was Carrie. But to help with the problems with my hearing, but also too to just kind of give me this new start, they said, okay, so what do you want your name to be? And I was like, all right, I've got it. And I was all excited. And I go up to them and I go, I want my name to be He-Man. And they go, He-Man? And I go, yes, He-Man. He-Man Himmelreich? I'm like, yep. They're like, nope. And I'm like, oh. They said, how about you go think about it a little bit more? And I'm like, okay. So I go back and I'm like, come back to them. I'm like, okay, I've got it. And they said, all right, what do you want it to be? I said, how about Smiles? And they said, okay, but how about we change it just a little bit and instead we call you Myles? And I was like, okay. So they legally changed my name to Myles Terrence Stefan Himmelreich, which I think I love that name. Like, it's an awesome name, Myles Terrence Stefan Himmelreich. But I do bug my parents because I said, one of the very few things you actually knew about my diagnosis was I'd have problems with reading and writing. And you give me the name Myles Terrence Stefan Himmelreich, like I'll ever be able to spell that. Thank you. But in that name, Myles Terrence still acknowledging my birth name of Terry and still acknowledging who I was, where I came from. Again, something that to me was very important and I always really, really respected and appreciated about my parents, that they were open about all that. So we got this new name, new family, new start. We're going into school. I originally remember thinking school was this place where you play on the playground, go down on the slide, and play on the swings all day. I was pretty good at that. So I thought, hey, I'm gonna ace this school thing. I can go down the slide and pretty good on the swings. So little did I know that there was going to involve a lot of reading and writing. I went through kindergarten, did pretty good. I was pretty good at nap time. I was good at eating my snacks. So I slid through there, went into grade 1. I thought things were fine. I thought things were all good. I was meeting with a school counselor at the time, and she was helping me because I had a speech delay. And so she was working with me, a couple days a week. And near the end of that first school year, I meet with her and my parents, and we go into this room. And I remember, going down the hallway and going into the room, and they explained to me that I was going to repeat grade 1. And so it was to kind of catch up to where the other kids were. I don't remember exactly, what they said, what the words were that they used, how they explained it to me. But the thing that I do remember is leaving that meeting with them and walking back to my classroom and thinking to myself, man, the teacher likes me so much, she wants me for another year. Okay, I'll stay for her. So not really connecting things, but hey. So I go back, go to my classroom, it's all good. The following year, I go to grade 1 for the second time. One day during recess or lunch, I'm walking through the field and there's these 2 kids and they're fighting. And the one kid on the bottom yells out, Myles, help me. And I look over and the kid on the top was the school bully. His name was Ed Wheeler. And we would, have meet-ins quite a bit over the next few years, Ed and I. And so I thought, oh, okay, I got to help this kid on the bottom. No idea who the kid was, but he knew my name. So I pick up a rock, and at this point, we're probably about 4 feet away from each other. I pick up a rock and I throw it at Ed to get him off of that kid, and I miss. I take a step closer, pick up a rock that's a little bit bigger, again, throw it, miss. Step close enough that I'm now leaning over top of them, and I have a rock that is big enough that I have to use both my hands, and I'm looking over top of Edward's head, and I look at him, and I throw the rock. I hit Ed in the face, and I cut his eye open. He gets up, crying and bleeding. The other kid gets up scared and runs away. And what do? I stand there. Mr. Pito, the gym teacher, comes over and goes, "What's going on?" And all the kids, "Myles threw a rock at Ed's head and cut his eye open." And he goes, "Did you do that?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Go to the office." And I go, "Okay." So I go to the office. I end up getting sent home. This was the very first of what was going to be many, 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 many times where I didn't understand the consequences for my actions. I didn't understand cause and effect. That if I did something, there was going to be something that would happen to me. I was sent home. My parents got upset at me, sent me to my room. Now, I didn't understand, why would I be in trouble? I was helping the kid on the bottom. What did I do wrong? And I couldn't make sense of it. But I didn't really think about it much more. One of the kind of advantages I had was actually not being able to connect things, because if I was able to connect things, I think that's where, and I got better at it as I got older. And as I got older, that would be where I would start to feel hurt more often. As a young kid, I was very much picked on and very much blamed, but I didn't understand how bad it really was. I didn't connect it. So I was pretty happy as a young kid. Didn't understand that I was quite a bit behind developmentally where the other kids were. So I was struggling with the reading and writing. I go into grade 6 and I'm thinking, okay, this is my last year of elementary school. Where I grew up, they did elementary school, kindergarten to grade 6, then junior high was grade 7 to 9, and then high school was grade 10 to 12. And I thought, okay, next year I'm going into a new school, a new environment, new experiences. Maybe this is where things will change. And so I remember when I was leaving grade 6, is coming to the end of that year, and I remember thinking that I was weird and I was different, but I couldn't understand or explain why. I just felt like I wasn't like the other kids. And by that time, I was starting to kind of be able to tell that they were quite often making fun of me, and that, they didn't want to be my friends and they didn't want to hang out with me. Or if they did, it was only until other people came around. And so I remember just feeling this sense of like loneliness. Okay? And I thought, well, maybe a new school, new environment, maybe I'll make new friends, things will change and be better. So I go into junior high and I'm thinking to myself that this is a different school. So we'll see what happens now. And there are many things that were different about this school. Hallways were bigger, the lockers were bigger, the kids were bigger, classrooms were bigger, school assignments became bigger, and the problems that I was having became bigger. Throughout my first years of school, through grades 1 to 6, I was in what was known as an LD class, learning disabilities class. And in that classroom, I received one-on-one support. We had about 2 teachers and there was only about 10 kids in the class. This was really good for me because 2 of the things that really helped me succeed in my life are routine and repetition. Routine and repetition help me know what's going on, what's going to happen next, and give me a sense of comfort, because I can recognize and be like, oh, I remember doing this, or, oh yeah, I know what's next, right? And so So it was really helpful to be able to have that routine and repetition. And I had these teachers that would go over the assignments with me. And they would go over the steps 4, 5, 6 times, however many times I really needed to fully understand it. When I went into grade 7, I was now integrated into a regular classroom. And this classroom now had 25 or more kids with one teacher. I wasn't given the opportunity for that routine or repetition. I wasn't able to put my hand up and say, sorry, can you repeat that one step 6 times before we move on to the next step or the other 27 steps that you're going to show us. I wasn't able to process things at the same speed as everybody else. And because of that, and not being supported in my processing speed, it was seen as I wasn't paying attention, that I wasn't listening. Because if I was paying attention and if I was listening, I'd be able to do the work like everybody else. So here I am now being given this label and this name tag that is that kid that doesn't listen. I would, every third or so period of the day, go into the LD class in junior high and meet with the teacher there and go over the work that I'd done in the other classrooms. So now I had some time to kind of go over the steps. So say we were doing math and we were doing, you have to cross, multiply, and divide. And the teacher would teach me step 1, step 2, step 3, there you go. Step 1, step 2, step 3, there you go. By the third or fourth time, I started to be able to understand how to do it. And so I could answer the first question, and then I'd start to work on the second one. By the end of the school day, I had quite a bit of homework because I wasn't able to get it done in class. And so I would finish, walk home, see the birds, go play on the playground, have a snack, watch some cartoons, have dinner. And then my mom would say to me, do you have any homework? And I would say, me? No, Mom, I'm a perfect student. I finish everything at school. And she'd go, okay, what do you have for homework? And I go, okay, fine. I've got math. And so my dad, who was an architect, would sit down with me and help me with the math. He would say, okay, so cross, multiply, and divide, you got to do step 1, step 2, there you go. And I'd say, no, that's not right. And he'd go, yeah, it is. Step 1, step 2, there you go. I said, no, that's not right. And he goes, yes, it is. Now the school books, the math books back then had the answers in the back, but you had to show the work. So I'd flip to the back and sure enough, the answer that he had was right. But the problem was the way he was teaching me, was it right? Yeah. But was it different? Yes. That was the hard part, was the way the teacher taught me, the way I'd learned and understood how to do it was different than the way my dad was teaching me now. Because I was anxious and because of my processing, it was really hard to get the words that were in my head out of my mouth. So in my head was the sentence, no, that's not the way the teacher taught me. For me, it's not right. But what came out of my mouth was half of that sentence. No, it's not right. So my dad would get frustrated and I'd get frustrated. I'd slam the books down, go to my room, slam the door and say, I'm not doing this stupid homework. And my dad would say, well, you have to deal with the consequences. And I'd be like, I don't care. Was it that I didn't care? No. Was it that I wasn't trying? No. I was trying and I cared more than anyone ever knew. To be able to get up every day and do all the steps that you have to do to get ready, to be able to go to an environment that is going to label you and put these name tags on you that say you're not trying, you don't care, that you're not focusing, that that you're stupid, that you're dumb. All of these things, to go into this environment every day knowing you're going to bang your head against the wall and you're never going to succeed, and you have to do this for 12 years straight. I was trying harder and I cared more than anyone ever knew. Because what seemed like the simplest thing of, okay, get up and go to school, that required me to get up, get dressed, have my breakfast, grab my homework, get to the school bus or get to the school on time, understand what time I need to leave home to be there, understand all the things I need to take with me. That executive functioning, that is, every little step that you do for everything every day of your life, if that's affected and you struggle with executive functioning, it makes what seems like the easiest and littlest things very, very difficult. But it looks like, well, he's lazy, getting up late again. No, he's just not, focusing. That's why he's forgetting stuff at home. Oh, he's playing out on the playground. That's why he's always late for class. So these labels and name tags that were being put on me, I started to put some more on myself. Whether someone said it or not, I always felt like I was stupid and I was dumb, that I wasn't good enough. And so what I realized by junior high was to almost wear those labels as, yep, that's what presents me and is who I am. Because it was a lot easier to say when the math teacher asked why I didn't do my homework, because I just didn't. And when he said, what, you weren't trying, you didn't care? And I go, sure, yeah. Because what else am I going to do? Am I going to say, well, I couldn't remember how to do it, and I wasn't able to, explain to my dad that the steps that I know how to do it were different than the steps that he was teaching. And then also too, I was distracted because this bird flew by the window and it was this little blue jay bird. And then I saw a blue jay bird at the playground on my way home. And I thought, oh, maybe that's the baby to that mom. I wonder if that baby's lost, but I guess if he's flying, he should be okay. So I didn't do my math homework because of the blue jay. I'm not going to say all that and sound really stupid and dumb. It's a lot easier to go, yeah, I just didn't do it because I didn't care. If that's what you want to think, sure. As I would sit in the classroom, and I'm now in trouble for not doing my homework. I now have detention at the end of the day. I'm learning about reading and writing, learning about geography, learning about, what's going on in the news, learning about drama, language arts, social studies, all of these different things, getting all of this different information into my head. I was expected to remember this information, keep track of it, and then, do a test later on. Now, I can't remember the steps to the math question when it was the day before. Do you think I'm going to remember anything in 3 months from now when we do a midterm? What about at the end of the year when we do the final exam? There's no chance I'm going to remember any of that stuff because it was too much information, right? So here I am struggling with processing speed. I'm struggling with memory. And now I'm struggling with sitting in the classroom. And what I want you to do is, you can see everybody at home, even if you have your screen off. I have a camera in your, no, I don't have a camera in your house, I'm kidding. But what you can do is, I'm just gonna trust the people I can't see. I want you to put your hands together like you're clapping, but what I want you to do instead of clapping is like you're running, right? So move your hands up and down, okay? And you're gonna just keep doing that, okay? So keep doing that and then go as fast as you can, okay? So everybody except Deanne can stop. Deanne, nope, Deanne, you gotta keep going. Everyone else can stop. Deanne, you're just gonna do that for the next 20 minutes. Okay, so here I go. All right, Deanne, can you unmute yourself for a minute?
Yeah.
Thank you. How did that feel? And do you think you could have done it for 20 minutes?
No, I could not have done that for 20 minutes. I felt like just really kind of agitated. That.
Yeah. How would you feel after 3 minutes of doing that?
It'd be extreme. I would feel tired and exhausted.
Awesome. Okay, so welcome to the body of an individual with FASD. So I always say I have, if you imagine like thousands of bubbles inside your body, constantly making your body move like that, right? And you can't stop them. You know, your body's go, 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 go. Can you imagine how tired and exhausted my body is every single day? Now add on top of that, that when I'm sitting in the classroom, the lights above me are buzzing, the fluorescent lights, and grabbing my attention, and they're going, hello, hello. The boy to me on my right is tapping his pen, and that's grabbing my attention, going, hello, hello. The girl to the left of me, who has way too much perfume on, those smells are grabbing my attention, going, hello, hello. The taste of the toothpaste that I used that morning is mint. It's grabbing my attention and burning my mouth, going, hello, hello. The tags on my clothes, the way the socks feel, all of those things are grabbing my attention all at the same time, going, hello, 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 hello. And then I have bubble trouble inside my body, millions of bubbles making me move around. So here I am moving around. I've got all this sensory issues. And when the teacher says, Myles, what's the answer to the question? Then I go, huh? I don't know. He sees that I've been moving all around and that I'm not focusing, I'm not listening, I'm not paying attention, and now I can't answer the question. But do you think he can smell the smells that I smell? Nope. Do you think he's affected by the light like I am? Nope. Do you think he has the bubble trouble that I have? Nope. Nobody understood that. The harder part of that too was that I didn't even understand what was going on. I would go home and I'd look in the mirror and I would think, look like everybody else. I should be able to act and have the same results as everybody else. But even if I did at that time understand what was going on, what 13, 14-year-old kid is going to stand up and go, sorry, teacher, I'm not sure what the answer to the question is because I have sensory overload. And for me, sensory issues like that can actually physically be painful for me. And so the lights are bugging me and the smells and the noises and all of this stuff is grabbing my attention going, hello. And then I also have bubble trouble. And so that's making my body move around all the time. And then my inability to process things at the speed that you would like me to is making it harder for me to answer the question. But also too, my memory is also affecting that I may not have the actual answer in my brain because I don't remember how to do that. And so then I'm trying to realize what's going on. And then I can't make sense of it because I can't remember the steps. And it's not that I'm not listening to you. I have sensory overload in the processing, and I'm trying to answer all this, but I don't know how because I have what's called Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder. What kid, if you actually understood that, would say that? Nobody. Again, a lot easier to go, sure, I'm not paying attention and I'm not trying and I don't care. I would start to place those labels on myself. Oh yeah, hey, I'll be the class clown. That way they don't see the stupid label. Hey, I'll be the kid that doesn't care. That way they don't see the dumb label. So now I'm in trouble again. Every day, all day long, I was in trouble. And so by the end of the day, I go to gym and I am in the locker room and I'm getting changed and I'm super excited because at the end of the school day, I'm going to play in the basketball game. Now, with the bubble trouble that I have, it can make it hard to sit still and focus. But the positive side of that is when I wear light clothing and I go to a gym and I play basketball, volleyball, go running, anything like that, I can let those bubbles go and use all that energy and I'm really good at sports. So here was something, basketball, that I was actually naturally gifted at. And I could do this and I enjoyed it and I was really, really good at it. So as I go into the gym, I'm excited to play. And more than that, I'm excited to fit in with the other kids for the first time. And I'm excited to even be better than some of the other kids for the first time. The coach looks at me and goes, Myles, you know this one thing that makes you feel normal? The one thing that you hold on to all day long? You don't get it. Go away. That's what I heard and felt. What he actually said was, because you didn't do your homework, you have to go to detention and you don't get to play in the game tonight. So I would go to detention and I would sit there. And I'm sitting there and I'm, singing or humming away. And I'm like, do 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 do. And the teacher goes, is this a joke to you? Do you think this is funny? And I'm like, no. And he goes, sit there and be quiet. I'm like, okay. I didn't understand why I was there. So I'm in trouble for something I didn't do yesterday. So yesterday at 3:30, I didn't do my math homework. So today, 24 hours later at 3:30, I'm sitting in detention, cause and effect, the consequences for my actions. I didn't understand why I was there. All I knew was I was a bad kid and I didn't get to play in basketball, the one thing that made me feel good about myself. Again, that was the example of, well, it's a behavior. It's a bad behavior. Let's punish him. Right? The interesting thing was thinking about all those teachers that would walk past the door and go, when is this kid going to learn? When is he going to change? Why didn't anyone stop and go, maybe we need to change what we're doing? Maybe it's not on him to change. Maybe it's on us. Why don't you add a period after school that I go do my homework with somebody? So that way I don't have homework when I go home. I'm not fighting with my parents. I have something to hand in the next day. You're not frustrated at me. I'm not frustrated at myself. It's a win-win. At the end of the day, I'm going to end up in detention more times than not. So why not just plan ahead to have this extra day or extra period that I can do my work? And nobody thought of that. Nobody thought, what can we do to help him? It was, what punishment is going to get through to this kid? So I go through school and I'm thinking to myself that I don't understand why things don't connect, why things don't kind of work the way they do for other kids, and why I just can't quite fit in like the other kids. I remember thinking to myself that, I would do things and then be like, oh, why did I do that afterwards? Right? And then I'm like, man, I was quite often seen as being immature, right? You're so childish. You're so immature. Who does that? I would, sing these little kid songs or do these little funny things, that I thought was cute and funny, and other people thought that I was just being, really immature. At this point, school was not a place that was fun, not a place I look forward to, and it was a place that was a really big struggle for me. So I didn't really have friends. I wasn't able to do the schoolwork. I was now feeling like I was fighting with my parents more than having any fun. And so I really felt a sense of like loneliness, that nobody understood me and I didn't really understand me. I remember thinking, if I had a chance to talk to my biological mom, maybe she would be able to help make sense of what's going on for me, because I just needed somebody to explain it to me. I didn't understand what was happening. I wrote this poem thinking, if I had the chance to talk to my mom at that point, this is what I would say to her. So the first part's called A Son's Plea. Mommy, keep me home today. Mommy, I don't want to go out and play. I'm not like the rest out there. I don't fit in. It's not fair. I may not be able to read or write. I may not be able to tell the difference between day and night. I laugh. I cry. I have hopes and dreams. But because I may be a little slower, nobody cares. Or at least that's how it seems. Shelter me from this cruel world and hold me tight. Mommy, keep me safe and tell me it'll be all right. A mother's reply. My angel, I can't keep you sheltered from all the pain out there. It's like a horrible illness that floats through the air. I love you, my angel, so I must let you go. I love you, my angel, so I must let you grow. You very well may stumble along the way, and you'll find out that's not always okay. My angel, I once made a mistake when you were but a baby inside of me, but I promise you I'll never make a mistake like that again because I want you to be all you can be. I smile when I see you laugh. I cry when I see you sad. I thank the Creator every day for you. My angel, you're the best I've ever had. Every angel has to work hard to get their wings. Every angel has to do very special and meaningful things. Your heart and determination are what helps replace these tears with a smile on my face. My angel, your wings will be the ones to raise this world to a better place. At that point, I had no real drive to be in school. It was a place of failure more than a place of success and learning. It was supposed to be this place that was supposed to educate me and teach me and show me the ways of the world, right? And I wasn't learning anything. One day, I'm going through the hallway, and every day as I go through this hallway to get to a couple of different classes, there was this round red thing on the wall. And this round red thing on the wall would always scream at me, "Hey, Myles, pull me, pull me, pull me." And I was like, I should pull. No, I can't. But every day I was like, oh, I want to, I want to. What was that little red thing? The fire alarm. Now, I never pulled it until one day. I'm walking down the hallway with my friends. And of course, they go, Myles, because everyone knew if anyone's going to do anything, that we shouldn't do, it'll be Myles. Ask him. He'll do it. Hey, Myles, I double dog dare you to pull the fire alarm. And I'm like, oh. Now, as a teenage boy, girls, you may not realize this, but if you're a teenage boy and you're double dog dared, you have to do it. If you're dared or double dared, whatever. But there's a written law, I think it's back in like Egypt on the walls, it's written that if you were double dog dared as a teenage boy, you must do it. So now I have to pull the fire alarm because they double dog dared me. So I pull the alarm. The kids start making their way down the hallway, the alarm's going off, people are freaking out. Teacher comes out and goes, "Who did that?" And all the kids, "Myles." And he looks at me, and I'm standing there right beside the fire alarm, and he goes, "Did you do that?" And I go, "Yep." And he goes, "Go to the," and I go, "Office." I know. Now, why didn't I run? Why didn't I lie and say, no, I didn't? Why did I just stand there? In this instance, did I know what I did was wrong? Yeah, I did. But I finally didn't have this thing that was like tapping me, going, hey, 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 hey. I finally felt like I could go, oh, okay, stop tapping me finally. I go to the office and I end up having to write an apology letter to the fire department. It was hard because it was like these things would grab my attention and I couldn't not focus on them, or I had to do something about it, but I didn't know what or how, right? And so as I was going through school, at that point, I didn't know or understand what FASD was. I knew I had FAE, FAS, whatever this diagnosis was, but I didn't understand what that meant. All I knew was that's why I struggled with my reading and writing. And my parents would say, it just means we have to find a different way to do things. Doesn't mean you can't do it, just means got to find a different way. Now, my parents fostered over 70 kids. They adopted 11 of us and have 2 biological children. And out of the 11 of us that were adopted, 4 of us have FASD. And so FASD, Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder, I always say if you want to see the whole spectrum, come to our house for dinner because you will see the full spectrum, right? And You'll see some of the struggles that some of us have. You'll see some of the strengths that some of us have. And you'll see that the different supports that are needed for all of us. One of the things that my parents always taught me that was awesome and definitely would play a huge role in my life later on was in our home, just like the word disability is the word ability, that's what we focus on. We don't focus on what your disability is, we focus on what your ability is. And to me, that meant a lot, right? Because I was having enough people tell me what I couldn't do, that I was doing things wrong, that I wasn't good enough. And I was telling myself that, as hard as my parents, teachers, people in the community were on me, I was even harder on myself. And what they didn't realize was, as frustrated as they were, I was just that frustrated, if not more. But the difference was the teacher got to go home at the end of the day. And my parents got to send me off to school. People in the community didn't have to be around me all the time. But I have teachers frustrated at me from 8:30 to 4:30. I have my parents frustrated at me from 4:30 till 8:30. I have the community frustrated at me on the weekends. I am looking in the mirror thinking, wow, there's not a time that someone's not frustrated at me. There's not a time that someone's not tired and done. Constantly, this is what my life looks like right now. Nobody wants to hang out with me. Nobody wants to be my friend because I'm that weird kid. The teachers just see me as a bad kid, behavior problems. My parents, they just don't know what to do with me. So it was really getting to a point where I just wasn't happy, with school and wasn't feeling any sense of purpose, right? And so that was something that was really big. I ended up going into junior or to high school, right? And that's grade 10 to 12. And I figured by that point, it wasn't a matter of, oh, yay, new school, new experience. It was a matter of, okay, good. A couple more years left. I'll get this out of the way. I'll be done. All of these problems I'm having every day will be gone because I figured they're all stemming from being at school. So if I'm not in school, then I won't have to worry about them all. Little did I know I was totally wrong about that, but I go into grade 10. And in grade 10, I was at this school where they focus more on hands-on learning. So there was a lot of woodworking, mechanics, engineering, art classes, things like that. And so for me, I did really well being able to learn hands-on. If I could do something and see it coming together and see the steps, then I could understand it. Things like math were very abstract. They were things I couldn't see. And so it was really hard for me to learn things that I couldn't see. I couldn't understand them because I couldn't see them. So here in this school, I was actually doing pretty good. I had pretty good grades and I was kind of keeping to myself. That way I wouldn't be seen as that weird kid too much. I thought that maybe this way I can get through school and just finish the next couple of years off and things will be okay. The summer between grade 10 and 11, I'm at the park and they've now just put up these new basketball nets. And they're a little bit lower than regulation. So regulation is about 10 feet and these are about 9 or so feet high. And it was really cool because I was able to dunk on them. So I'm there and a couple of people that I know, we're all meeting up there and we're playing basketball. And as that summer goes on, it becomes kind of the place to be, is on the basketball courts. And so we're there. I meet these two guys. They just moved into the community and they'd moved from Saskatchewan. We start hanging out, we're kind of getting along pretty good on the basketball courts. And one day one of them says, okay, let's split the teams up And they go, okay, let's do all of us here, us and our cousins and stuff on one side, and then the rest of the people on the other side. And so I start walking over with these guys. John and Jason is their names, and they're my new friends. And Jason goes, oh, hey, Myles, we're just doing it with, all of us, us Aboriginals, we're sticking together on this one. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm Métis. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, half French, half Cree. And he goes, oh, okay. All right, well, I thought you were just a white boy. And I was like, no. He's like, okay, well, come on, come join us. And I was like, sweet. It felt awesome because all of a sudden I was like accepted, and I was like, cool. So one day, John and Jason said, hey, why don't you come to our house? Come hang out with us. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll stop by my house and then I'll head over. So I go to their house. Now, I grew up in a home that we would go to church on Sundays, and it was a Mormon religion. So we didn't swear, we didn't smoke, we didn't drink, we didn't even drink caffeine, right? I remember once when I was like 13, 14, being at a friend's sleepover, and his dad stocked the bar with different pops for us for our sleepover. And I remember having a Dr. Pepper with caffeine in it. And I'm like, oh, I'm so bad. I am like, ooh, yep. I've jaywalked and I've drank caffeine in the same day. Going to hell. So that was the extent of my being bad, was drinking caffeine Dr. Pepper. I go over to John and Jason's house for the first time, and John's sitting down, cracking open a beer, drinking with his dad. Jason is sitting with his mom having a cigarette, and they're all sitting at the table talking about how bleeping beautiful day it is out, and how they bleeping need to go get some bleeping groceries from the bleeping grocery store. I'll let you fill in the blanks yourself, but I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, I have never seen anyone sit and talk like that, let alone with their parents, and they're drinking with their parents and smoking, and their parents are totally okay with it. And I'm like, wow, it's like a reality show that's like, oh my goodness. So totally different world for me. Now, I start hanging out with these guys on the basketball court, then going and hanging out with them at their house. The summer's going along. I'm getting these friends. Things are going good. I'm excited. One day, one of them says, hey, heading up to the liquor store. Do you want anything? And I was like, sure. So I pull out $20. I'm like, here, just get me whatever. Now, I said get me whatever because I'd never drank before. I didn't know what beer or alcohol or what to ask for, right? So, I want to look cool and fit in. And so I was like, sure, yeah, just get me whatever. So he goes up to the store and he comes back and he gives me this paper bag. And in the paper bag was a 2-liter Wildberry cooler. Now, I later on found out that that was only like $6 and he just kept the change. But I was thinking, wow, this must be a $20 drink. Oh, this must be really good. So though I hung out with guys that were, kind of rough and tough and did things that were kind of rough and tough, even trying to be, a rough, tough guy, I was never really good at it. It was not who I was meant to be, but I always tried. And so here I am trying to look like this bad, tough guy drinking out of a paper bag, a Wildberry cooler. So I drink about half of it, end up passing out, wake up a little bit later and they're all laughing. They're like, hey, I thought you drank. And I'm like, oh yeah, I drink all the time. It's just, I'm just tired taking a nap, And I'm like, okay. So I drink the other half of it, pass out again. As that summer went on, I would find myself going to the basketball courts, meeting up with them, playing basketball, smoking some cigarettes, going to their house, having some beer, having some coolers, having some vodka, having a little party, going home. And I'd go home and my parents would be like, were you smoking? And I'd be like, no. Not realizing, of course, I reeked like cigarette because I've been smoking all day. And then, I always did really good in gym and in drama, right? And so I was very animated. And so I always thought I was this great actor. And maybe if I go home drunk, they won't notice because I can act my way out of it. So I come home and I'm stumbling around, and my mom goes, "Were you drinking?" And I go, "Mom, I love you way too much to go and drink. You told me not to drink, and I don't drink the drink." And then I fall down the stairs. Somehow they put together that I was drunk. I don't know how. They were really smart, I guess. So that summer, I'm making friends, having fun playing basketball, but my relationship with my parents is the worst it's ever been. We're fighting all the time, we're arguing. So by the end of that summer, my mom and dad sit me down and said, you know, if you can't follow the rules here and you're bringing in drugs into the house and you're drinking and you're smoking, you can't be in this home. We've got all these kids in here, and you just can't be doing that stuff in the home with these kids. And I was like, okay, whatever, I don't care. So then by the end of that summer, my parents said, if you can't do these things, you can't be here. And I said, I don't want to be here. I've got my friends. They're my family now. So at the age of 17, I left home. In the back of my head, this little voice said, hey, told you. Just like all those foster homes, you weren't good enough and nobody wants you. It took this home a couple years longer than all the other ones, but they're getting rid of you too because you're not good enough and nobody wants you. So I left Brian and Christine, my mom and dad. I left their house and ended up going and just staying wherever I could, kind of couch surfing and staying at friends' houses, wherever the party was, kind of crashing there. What started out as partying, what was fun and having a few drinks and stuff, quickly turned into an addiction. I found myself that I was drinking every day, all day, and sleeping wherever I could, just constantly finding myself, just trying to make it through that day, whatever it kind of took. And I started experimenting with different drugs, but for me, the main thing was drinking. So here I was doing these different drugs, but drinking all day long as well. And moving from place to place, sometimes someone's couch, wherever I could crash at that time. Now, here I am, 17 years old, and, going to turn 18 here soon. And all of a sudden, the expectations on me are going to change. When I turn 18, I now have the fact that I'm an adult and I'll be charged as an adult. So I go from being at home playing with Tonka trucks in the backyard in a pile of dirt to here I am out in the real world and I see this life-size Tonka truck in an empty field and I'm like, oh, if it's fun to play with one in the backyard, how awesome would it be to actually be in one? So if I were to do something like that, I'm going to get charged, I'm going to get arrested. But what people didn't understand was that developmentally, I was still that kid playing with the Tonka truck in the backyard. Even though my birth certificate would say chronologically I'm 17, 18, 19 years old, developmentally I was still a child. But all these expectations on me were that of an adult, even though I was still a child and needed to be supported like a child. I shouldn't have been out on my own. I shouldn't have been living on the streets as a child. If we think about if someone says, oh man, this kid, we're just going to send him out there. He's got to learn. He's got to deal with this. He's 8 now. It's time for him to get out there and figure things out. I would imagine most people would be like, you can't put an 8-year-old out on the street. But unfortunately in our society, that's what we're doing way too often is supports are taken away. programs end, patients' understanding and care isn't the same anymore, all because an individual is now 17, 18, 19, 20 years of age. And all of that's taken away. And these expectations are put on them that should not be put on them. This accountability that you can't reach. How am I supposed to know to pay bills and rent and get food and stuff like that? Would you expect a 12-year-old to do that? No, but that's where I was developmentally. So here I am, every day is pretty much just drinking, doing drugs, whatever, trying to make it through, get this job, that job, whatever. Not really connected with my family. Know that these guys really aren't my friends. They're just using me for the drugs and stuff and the alcohol. And so no friends, no family, addiction issues. That I looked at a little bit over the break. So one of them was asking about kind of if my parents could have done, anything different, or had they intervened. And looking back, it's something that I really believe, for me, I needed to experience, and I needed to go through. And from my parents' perspective, they needed to allow me to have these experiences, but they also needed to protect the family. So the people that I was hanging out with at the time and the things I was doing wasn't safe for the other kids in the home. So as hard as it was for my parents, I believe it was the right thing to do for them at the time. It was interesting because I spoke with my mom, and it was probably a couple of years ago now, but I remember being at home and she was telling me about my brother, and she said, "Oh yeah, your dad had to go pick your brother up at 1:00 this morning, 1 a.m. and he was out partying and you have to go pick him up and bring him home." And I remember inside feeling really hurt because I thought, when I was his age or even younger, you kicked me out of the house, but yet you're going and picking him up. And this thought process was going on in my head. And as that was happening, my mom continued on and she goes, we're just trying to figure out what to do. We almost lost one kid because we didn't know what to do. So, and that really hit me hard because I was like, oh my goodness, this is them saying, hey, we're parents, but we're humans. There's no guidebook to this parenting thing. And, you're doing the best you can. And so I think for them being able to look at what I went through and now be able to support my two younger siblings in my family that also have FASD in a different way, I think is something that we've taken, that my parents and I have taken from this whole experience, is that they did the best they could and they did what they knew to do at the time and what they thought was right. I can tell you, as an individual who was out there, doing the drugs and drinking and all of that, even when I was in the park and, earlier that day told my parents, well, I hate you, I don't need you. I knew they loved me and I knew that they did the absolute best that they could. So I think that's one of the things that as parents, I really hope that you can know and understand is, if you are doing the right things with the right intentions and you love that child, they'll know that. Will they be angry at you? Will they say they hate you and stuff like that? Yeah, good chance. And that's any kid. But just knowing for yourself on those days when you're questioning yourself, if you know you're doing it for the right reasons, then it'll be okay. Because I I knew that with my parents, that, you know what, at the end of the day, they were doing the best that they could, right? So, and then there was another question about emotional dysregulation. So when it comes to things like emotional dysregulation, I think it's really difficult because that's something that is kind of dependent on the individual, but it's also because the brain is affected, right? And it's the frontal front part of your brain, whatever that's called, is affected. And so that's where you'll sometimes get things like bipolar, right? Where you can have the super highs and then the super lows. So things like medication can help. Now, I'm going to say this, and this is really important. There is no medication for specifically FASD, okay? There's medication that can help with sensory issues. There's medication that can help with bipolar. There's medication that can help with many different things, sleep, things like that. But there's no specific medication for FASD. Now, some people believe that natural medicine is best. Some people believe that to not use medication. Whatever your personal beliefs are, but if you can understand that it's individualized for each child, right? And so it might be something that somebody might need. But what we have to be really, really careful of is that you're not losing the child. Many times my parents were told, well, maybe put them on Ritalin. Now, that partly was because there wasn't information on FASD. And so at that time, people were really big about Ritalin, and it was like, oh, this will calm your kid down. Now, would have it had me sit still in my seat? Maybe. Would have I learned and understood those steps that you're teaching me? No. Would have I, and this is the more important part, been that kid who I was, that if somebody fell and scraped their knee, I was the first one there to help them up and give them a Band-Aid. If the teacher needed the attendance taken in the office, I was the first one to do that. If somebody was sad, I was the first one to run over and give them a hug and try to cheer them up. Don't medicate your child at the loss of who they really are, at the loss of their character. And their character may have a lot of energy, right? And it'd be very tiring for you sometimes, but you don't want to lose who that child truly is, right? So making sure that you're checking the medication, make sure it's the right medication, it's the right dosage, making sure that medications aren't counteracting each other. I did a health survey and I went throughout the world, international health survey. And one of the things that we found, we got back with something like, I think it was 11 pages double-sided of people listing the medications that they were on. And some people were listing being on 5 to 13 different medications. When you're on that many different types of medications, it could very easily, they could be counteracting each other, right? So we have to make sure that if you're choosing to use medications, you're using them for the right reasons, right? And it's helping your child in the right way. So just gonna check, I'll keep on going here, but Deanne, was there any other questions that you want me to address right now?
Somebody did ask to share, if you could share the poem that you recited earlier.
Okay.
You can always send that to me and I can send it out, or if you choose to do so.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it just because I haven't ever really shared it. When I wrote that poem, I actually had sat down and wrote it all out in one take. And I remember putting it down and thinking, I didn't write that second part. That was my mom. And so it's something that's very personal for me. I have shared it sometimes, but I will let you know for sure. So.
I do have a couple others, but if you want to continue on, we can look at them after.
Okay, sounds good. All right, is the volume okay?
Everyone can just give a thumbs up if so.
Yes, it's okay. It's fine. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Good, good. All right. So, as I had said earlier on, when I was going to leave school, I thought once I'm done school, all these problems and struggles I'm having will be gone. I ended up going back to school in grade 11. And then at that time, my parents had bought me a bus pass so I could get to and from school. But they didn't pay for my school books or my school fees. Here I was, couch surfing, nowhere to really stay. And I actually was getting the best attendance I'd ever got. And I was getting the best grades I'd ever got. I was in this school where there's a lot of kids that were, drinking their vodka in their Slurpees and fighting with teachers. But who was the one that got kicked out? Me, because I didn't have my school fees paid. And here I am being kicked out of school. And there was two voices in my head. One said, seriously, I'm doing the best I've ever done, best grades, best attendance, and you're still kicking me out. And the other voice said, sweet, that's good. I don't really want to be here anyways. This place just, I bang my head against the wall every day and just feel like a failure. So why would I want to come here? So if you're giving me an out, I'll take it. So I left school. I never got to grade 12, didn't get to graduation, all of that stuff. I went into the work field thinking, all right, get a job, I'll be fine. What I didn't realize was instead of having, students, I had coworkers. Instead of having supervisors, I had, instead of having teachers, I had supervisors. And instead of having principals, I now had managers. All of the things that I struggled with in school, I now struggled with in the workplace. Remembering the steps, how to do them every day. I struggled with that. Being able to handle the sensory issues, all the different noises, the smells, the material, all of those things in the workplace, I had to now deal with. And then being able to even process what was going on was difficult for me. So I was struggling with getting to work on time. I always struggled with being late. And when I was in school, it didn't matter if I got ready the day before. It didn't matter if I lived, across the street from the school or if I lived 15 minutes away. I was constantly late. And this happened again with work. I would constantly be late for work. So when you are a teenager and you're not doing your job properly, you're messing things up, you're coming in late, it's very easy to get rid of you. Because if you're working at, a Little Caesar's pizza place, they can get rid of you, open the door, and there'll be somebody new wanting and willing to work. And so I constantly was getting let go. My resume always looked really good because I had, say, 20 jobs, but that was in 2 months. I could get the job, I just couldn't keep the job. So here I am still struggling with everything that I was struggling with in school. And now these so-called friends that I have are the same people that are beating me up, the same people that are stealing my money from me. These are the same people that are trashing my house that I'm staying in. They don't care. I one night was with these guys and they ended up beating me up and leaving me, and I was unconscious, and they came to and I was in a pool of blood and my face was all messed up. I remember before that happened, I looked up at them and I was laying on the ground and I said, the only thing you can take from me is my life, because I had no money left because I bought all the alcohol that night and they were mad that I wasn't going to buy cigarettes. And so they proceeded to beat me up. It wasn't even 24 hours later, I was in the basement with these two guys that did this to me, and they're holding a beer, and they're like, "Hey man, what happened?" And I was like, I don't remember. And they're like, "Yeah, me neither. We blacked out. It was so crazy." And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, cheers, bro." I was like, "Yeah, cheers, bro." I knew what they did. They knew what they did. But what if I got somebody to come and beat them up for beating me up? Then they're probably going to come back and beat me up again. But even worse than that, what if somebody beat them up and then they didn't want to be my friends? People didn't understand that. People would look at me and go, "Myles, these people aren't your friends. They're using you, abusing you, taking advantage of you, beating you up. They're not your friends." I knew that. But what people didn't understand was, you want me to get rid of them? They're all I've got right now. I don't have my family. I don't have school. I can't keep a job. Every 5 or 6 days, they say something nice to me, or they cheers me when I buy them a beer and they call me bro. I didn't want to be alone. That fear of the attachment of nobody likes me, nobody wants me, I'm not good enough. Add on top of that, that I had no self-esteem in feeling a sense of purpose and self-worth. I had no self-worth, so I didn't believe in myself, so I didn't believe that I deserved to be treated better. And that's what people didn't understand. It wasn't a matter of I wanted to hang out with them. I didn't have anyone else. And so it was my way of coping. Using drugs and alcohol, not the best way, but it was my way of coping. And I think that's something that a lot of people experience, is using drugs and alcohol to cope with things. Until I could find a healthier way, and until I could find a way that was better for me, that's how I coped at the time. So around the age of 19 or so, I started looking for my biological family. And I thought, if I can find my bio family, then maybe they'll be able to answer all these questions that I have about me and about life and about, why things are so hard and different and all that. I ended up connecting with one of my brothers, and we're making plans to meet up. Now, I haven't seen them since I've been about 3 or so years old. And I was 19 at this time, so it was 16 years. I had always envisioned in my head what it was going to look like to meet my family. For some reason, I pictured going into this apartment, going up the stairs, turning to the right, and then going into this apartment door. And there would be my mom and my dad and my 2 older brothers and my 2 younger sisters. And there'd be a spot in the middle. And I'd go stand in the middle. And it was like we'd be ready for this family portrait. And I was all excited. I was like, "Oh, this is so great." So here I am talking to my brother, and I said, "Man, I'm so excited to meet up with you again after all these years." And I said, "You got to tell me about mom and dad." He goes, "Well, we got different dads." I was like, "Oh yeah." He goes, "Anyways, your dad, he killed some guy, and then he went to jail, and he ended up getting killed." And I was like, "Oh." And he goes, "Yeah, and then mom died a couple of years ago." I was like, "Oh." He's like, "Anyways, man, I will see you at the Greyhound tomorrow morning." I was like, "Okay." And I hung up the phone. You want to talk about processing speed? This was a perfect example. I guess I should have cried or been sad or upset, but all I knew was that picture now was gone. And something I held on to for 16 years was gone in 16 seconds. I went to my friend's house and I was like, "Yeah, man, I just found out my mom and dad are both dead." He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. Do you want a beer?" And I was like, "Sure." And that's how I dealt with it at the time, because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't understand how to process loss, and I didn't understand how to do those things. When I was on the streets, I found a way of dealing with things, was kind of just pushing it down and going, "Okay, well, whatever, just keep going." And I had to do that. There were times where if I didn't do that, I was going to get sucked up and swallowed up by the depression, by the struggles, by all of these things that I was facing every day. So it was a tool and a strategy at the time that maybe wasn't the best, but it helped me. I would just go, okay, well, okay, so they beat me up. All right, well, we'll just keep going. I lost another job. Okay, we'll just keep going. I had another breakup with a girlfriend. Okay, just keep going. My parents have both passed away. Okay, just keep going. Right? And so at that time, that's kind of how I was dealing with things. I went into finding my family, and the adoption agency called and said, oh, here's a phone number for a couple other siblings that we didn't even know we had. And there ended up being something like 9 of us or something. I went into thinking, this is my family, this is my blood, this is going to be good. And it ended up not being at all. It ended up that, again, I was abused and taken advantage of and neglected. You know, the physical abuse from my own brothers and sisters, you know, that they're supposed to be my family, my blood. And so that was really difficult because I went into it thinking it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows. And the adoption agency never said, hey, be careful. They never said this may not be the big dream that you're hoping for. And no one ever told me just because they're your blood family means you have to have a relationship with them. I thought for a long time I had to. They're my blood family, you know, and I have to love them and be close to them and all of those things. And I could easily see how if my mom was around, I would feel a sense of, you know, going and living with her and being with her and you know, owing things to her, right? And how that would hurt my parents that adopted me, right? Though they are always very open and honest with me, I could see that. And I've seen that happen. But what people don't realize is it's not a matter of looking at this family is better than that family. It's a matter of hoping that you'll be loved and accepted. And then this feeling of like connection. Well, that's my blood. So however they treat me is going to be okay, whether that's good or bad. And even if you know it's bad, I'm still going to say that my mom's perfect and great and wonderful because she's my mom, right? So it was a really difficult about 5 or 6 years of meeting my biological family and going through these experiences with them. Around the same time, I went to a bunch of different life skills programs, things like that. And I was doing this one, it was about 3 months long, and I ended up graduating. And they had this little graduation in the basement of this church. I walked down the aisle and the facilitator of the program handed me a certificate and said, congratulations, you did it. Here I was in my early mid-20s. And it was like, I did it? Like I did something? I felt so proud. And I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I can do something. You know, maybe I do have some self-worth and maybe I could get a job and be successful. And that simple little handshake and the statement, congratulations, you did it, really drove me to go, okay, I'm going to move out of the community I'm in because then I'll be away from those guys and I'll get a job, not just any job, but one that I really like. And I'll move closer to it. So maybe that'll help to be on time and, you know, I'll have more drive to go to it because I'll like it. So I ended up working at a sports leisure center, coaching kids sports. Then I was asked to help run birthday parties. Then I was asked to help run the daycare and do summer camps during the summer. And so I had all these little part-time jobs equaling full-time work. I ended up getting my own basement suite and I was all excited. I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I remember meeting with this, he was kind of like a guidance counselor person. And he was helping me set up with different programs and stuff. And, you know, I remember meeting with him once and he goes, man, you must be so happy. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, well, look at where you are and what you're doing. And I was like, yeah. But it was, just kind of waiting for the other shoe to fall off, right? And I had this fear of heights, like where I'm like actually afraid of heights, but also too, what people didn't understand was this fear of heights of success. You see, I went from being down here where there was nothing to now I had some friends through work that were positive, and I had some good work that was bringing in income. I had my own place. I had all of these things. And instead of being up here going, oh my goodness, I'm doing this, I was up here going, oh my goodness, that's a long way to fall down. The reason I was thinking that was because every time I had friends, I lost them. Every time I succeeded in school, I then failed. Every time I had a job, I lost it. So now I have all of these things all at once. I'm obviously going to lose them, and that one's going to really hurt. So I wasn't up there excited about what was happening because I was too worried about how bad it's going to hurt when I lose it. So
This
as I
little
would,
earpiece has managed to pop right off, and it looks like it should just twist or snap in, but this will.
so as I would continue to do this job, I ended up getting invited by a coworker to an FASD conference. I'd shared with this coworker as we were friends that I had FASD, and she said, "Do you want to come and speak at this conference?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." So I went there and I stood up, and there's about 100 people, and I had written out everything I wanted to say word for word. And as I got up there, I started talking, and I realized, you know what, I don't want to read off this piece of paper. I just want to share. And so I started sharing about some of the experiences I had, and how I now got to the point where I implement routine and repetition to be successful in my life, and how I use that. I have my birthday party bookings and my work bookings, and they're highlighted and they're in my day timer. And then when I come home, I can take that paper and I throw it in the garbage, and my next day's stuff is under that paper. And by throwing that in the garbage, it's a sense of like, I did it. And now what am I going to do next, right? And even implementing routine and repetition at that time to go grocery shopping. My diet at the time consisted of chocolate milk, gummy bears, peanut butter and jam sandwiches. But it was consistent. I knew where that was. I knew how to get it, and I had my own place. I would pay my rent with my first check and half my bills, then get my second check and pay the other half of the bills, and then what was left was mine. And I would do this the same way. And I was sharing this during this presentation. And here I was talking about these things and how I was being successful. At the end of the presentation, I had a young man come up to me in his 20s, and he shook my hand and he's like, "Thank you. That really meant a lot to me." And that really hit me. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, this is it. Except I didn't know what it was at that time. I was like, oh, this lady comes up to me and says, "Hey, we're running a program at the University of Calgary. Would you want to come and be a mentor?" And I was like, okay, so what would I do? And she said, well, you'd spend time with other individuals with FASD, and you would, go for coffee and just talk with them and hang out with them. And I was like, okay. And they're like, when we pay you full time and everything. And I was like, so you're going to pay me to go have coffee? Yeah, I can do that. I can have coffee and talk. Yeah, I'm pretty good at it. So, okay. So I ended up going to this program and ended up being able to help a lot of individuals with FASD by sharing my experiences. But as much as I was helping them, they were helping me. One of the greatest things that I get to experience in this quote unquote work is being able to connect with other individuals with FASD and have that feeling and hear those words, "Oh my goodness, I'm not the only one." When I talk about sensory issues, I have that too. When I talk about processing, oh my goodness, I'm not the only one. It is so amazing, so powerful when you have spent your whole life feeling like you're the only one, nobody gets you, nobody understands you. And then all of a sudden you meet someone else, you're like, oh, they're like me too, right? And they were feeling that with me, but I was feeling that with them. And so all of a sudden, I had this sense of purpose. I had this reason to get up every day. the Creator had put me here to make a change and to make a difference. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. So I was working at the university doing this program, ended up getting asked to go and help support a young man. His graduating class ended up getting a trip to Hawaii. And so they asked me if I would go and spend the week with him there and just be his one-on-one support. And they would cover everything. And so I took some time to think about it. I had to think about like a free trip to Hawaii, hanging out on the beach with this guy, flights paid for, hotels paid for, foods paid for, and I'm getting a spending allowance plus paid for my time working. Ooh. So after about 12 seconds of thinking about it, I was like, sure, I'll do it. I'll take that trip to Hawaii. I do have to admit, it did end up being quite a bit of work with this young man, but it was good. I was there, and as I was there, I realized, oh my goodness, it was over a weekend at the time. And I get back home, and I was like, wow, this is probably the first weekend I didn't go drink, in a long time. And so then I went the next weekend without drinking. Next thing I know, it'd been a month. And now I'm getting back into playing volleyball. I've got some really good friends, good healthy relationships, playing volleyball all the time. And so after volleyball, especially on tournaments on the weekend, we might go to the pub. And it was really cool because they'd have a drink or two and then they'd eat and just talk. And I remember intentionally telling one of them when they're like, hey, what are you drinking? I was like, oh, nothing. I don't drink anymore. And they're like, oh. And I was like, yeah. So here I am, and I realized that I had now gone a month without drinking. Now, I wasn't using drugs at all anymore, but I was still drinking up to that point. And I was like, wow, because I started finding new ways to deal with things. I found new ways to deal with, say the breakup of a relationship or loss of a job or even a birthday party, celebrations, things like that. I found different ways that I could deal with things and cope with things in my life that I didn't have to use drugs and alcohol anymore. What I didn't realize until I started really thinking about it was that it had been 15 or so years, 17 years, something like that, that I had been drinking, and wake up one day and go, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to drink anymore because doesn't work for me. It's not good. And I never drank ever again. And I am now 10 years sober. So that's been really awesome to make my 10-year mark this year. But I remember being able to, kind of reconnect with my parents. And I started going to these different conferences and talking and sharing about my experiences in life. And as I went to these conferences, I started to learn about FASD. Now, at that time, there was a lot of posters and people talking about, oh, if you have FASD, this percentage of people with FASD will end up in jail, and this percentage won't finish school, they'll have addiction issues, all of these things. And when I looked and saw those things, I was like, I could almost do a checklist and go, struggle with school, yep. Couldn't keep a job, yep. Addiction issues, yep. Trouble with the law, yep. All of these things, I could check the boxes. And I really thought, I'm more than a stat, I'm more than a statistic. I don't want that to be what defines me. And so I started sharing about, yes, this is what I experienced. This is, what some of my struggles are, but what can I do about that? I started to learn about, yeah, I can simply say I have sensory issues and I have sensory overload to the point where it can be physically uncomfortable. Many times I've seen posters and things like that on the internet that says people with FASD are victims who suffer. In our lives, whether you have a disability or not, you're going to have opportunities to be a victim or choose to not be a victim. I can choose to be a victim and go, my life's been hard, this has been difficult, all of these things. But if I choose to be a victim, then I'm also choosing to be stuck. I choose to not be a victim. I choose to be resilient. I choose to realize that I have sensory issues. What can I do about that? Well, I can wear sunglasses. I can wear earphones to block out the noise. I can go and pick out cologne that I can handle the smell of, and I can put that on my wrist so I can smell that if I can't handle the smells around me. I can put a hoodie on, because when I put a hoodie on, it's a sense of comfort. It's a sense of security to me. Even in the middle of the summer, you'd see me wearing a hoodie because of that sense of like, I'm safe and I'm okay. So if somebody touches me, I'll feel a little bit better about it. I can do these things, and that allows me to be able to get on that train or that bus and go to work and not feel the lights are too much, people are touching me, there's too many smells, the noise is too loud, like all of these sensory issues that would make me someone who's a victim suffering with FASD into somebody who has heightened sensory issues, but also has strategies and tools put in place to be successful. Right? Throughout my life, there's many things that I faced that were hard and difficult. And I'm not saying we don't all struggle and have things that are hard and difficult. It's a matter of allowing yourself that time to be in those moments, to feel those feelings. Be sad, be angry, be hurt. Be there, just don't live there. And that's the difference, right? Is making sure that you choose to not just live there. You be there, but don't live there, right? So when I started doing my presentations, I would share about those things and go, yeah, I have these things, but this is what I can do about them. What I realized was time is just like money. It's very abstract. So it's hard to understand something that you can't see. When I would get a job, it was just like school. I was told what time to be there. So the following Monday, I'd get up, I'd be all excited. And then I'd head out the door to go to school or to my job. And what would happen is that on my way out the door, I would realize that, you know what, I still have an hour until I have to be there. So I still have time to just put these shoes in order. So I put my shoes in order. And you know what, I still have time to put those dishes out of the dishwasher back in the cupboard. So I go do that. You know what, I might as well reload the dishwasher while I'm here and got some time. If you think about when someone says, hey, I'll meet you out at the car, I'll be there in a second. If they go and grab their shoes, put them on and meet you out in the car, is that the same as when they say, hey, I'll meet you out in the car, I'm just running to the washroom, I'll be out there in a second? No, that's obviously different lengths of time. But we say just a second. So how long is a second? Because I can't actually see time going by, it's really hard for me to gauge how long is this, how long is that, right? So to be able to go, oh, well, it'll just take a minute or two to do this, or take a minute or two to do that, it was very easy to think I had more time than I actually did. Now, the thing was that if I had to be somewhere at 9 o'clock and I was at home at, say, 6 o'clock, was I going to be late? No, I had 3 hours till I had to be there. If I was home at 8 o'clock and I had to be there at 9 o'clock, am I going to be late? Maybe. If I'm at home at 8:59 and I have to be there at 9 o'clock, am I late? No. Am I going to be late? Yes. I'm not late yet because it's 8:59, but I'm going to be late because I have to factor in the 7 minutes it takes to walk to the bus, the 12 minutes the bus takes, the 3 minutes it takes to get in the office. The thing was that whenever I went to school or got a job, everyone told me what time to be there, but no one ever told me what time to leave. No one said, congratulations, you got the job, see you on Monday, leave your house at 7:48. That was what I needed to focus on, was the 7:48, not the 9 o'clock. That concrete and abstract thinking of something I couldn't see, like time and money, makes things very difficult, right? So being able to share, okay, so I have to figure out what I can do about that, right? What strategies and tools I can put in place. One of the things that was so good about being able to, find these things and learn about FASD and what it meant for me was that as I was able to, think about processing speed. So now that I'm older, I can feel a little more comfortable, but I had to get to a point where I was able to feel comfortable self-advocating, right? And this is something that I talk about with people when I'm mentoring them. I still do one-on-one mentoring right now. And, just talking about being able to say to your boss, to your partner, to your family member, just give me a second, I got to figure that out. Or can you slow down? Or can you repeat that, right? Saying, hey, sorry, can you just tell me the first 3 steps and then I'll do that. And then can you tell me the rest after that, just so I don't get mixed up? Realizing that's okay. And more often than not, people are going to go, oh yeah, sure. So the first 3 steps are blah, blah, blah. Let me know when you're done. They're not going to go, which I thought they would. I thought if I said that, they would go, oh, are you stupid? Are you dumb? Why can't you do all 7 steps? What's wrong with you, you weirdo? They don't do that, right? But I've had to learn to self-advocate for myself. Now, that is talking about, understanding the processing speed. It may take me a little longer to put things into place, right? Understanding that, knowing what emotions to put out there. That's something that I've really realized that I'm not the best at. If I am, say I'm with my partner and she goes, hey, we're going to go to this movie and then we're going to go to the carnival. It's going to be super fun. Are you excited? And I'd be like, yeah, that'll be good. And she kind of looks at me like, well, tell your face, because you don't look very excited. I'm like, oh, no, I am. But then I go, oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Ryan and I are going to watch wrestling this weekend, and we're going to get the old one with Hulk Hogan where he slams Andre the Giant. Oh, it's going to be so awesome. I'm so excited. She's like, you're excited about watching a wrestling video about these 2 men who are in their underwear touching each other that you've watched hundreds of times. You're excited about that, but you're not excited about going to the fair. And I'm like, no, I am. What I realized was I have watched that video a lot. And I've watched it a lot with my best friend, Ryan. And we'll probably say the same things and we'll make the same jokes. And because I've been in that experience, I've been in that environment, I've done that, I've felt what excitement feels like at that environment. So I can connect that. I haven't been to this movie with you. I haven't been to the fair with you. So I know I'm supposed to be excited, but I haven't had those feelings to be able to connect that to properly express it. And it's not even properly express it, actually, it's to express it. I try, and I'm like, I gotta give her something. So I'll be like, oh, wow, that's fantastic. She's like, yeah, okay. But that's where I have to be able to advocate for myself and say, I am excited. I just haven't done this before, so I don't really know what the proper emotion for this is, right? So it's learning those things that allowed me to go, okay, so I can say to people that I struggle with loud noises and I struggle with, what is it called? I have memory issues too, yes. Visual noise. So visual noise is where you will have on your desk your pen, your book, your phone, your computer, your wires for your computer, your coffee cup, your water, all of these things. They could be all over your desk, or they could be organized on your desk. For me, if there's a bunch of things and they're kind of scattered all over, it's overwhelming and can be very uncomfortable for me. And that's called visual noise, when there's too many things that you're seeing at one time. So being able to have a clean kitchen, having the dishes organized and put away, being able to have stuff off the table and put away, being able to have your desk organized and clean is something that for me, when I'm able to clean it up and do that, then I can go, oh, right? There's not all this visual noise and all this stuff happening. I've been able to learn to self-advocate for myself, to say to family members that, you know, I don't do well with a lot of loud noises. And so I've had times where we've walked into a restaurant and one of my family members will turn even before I get in and go, hey, let's go somewhere else. It's too busy for me in there. Not turning around and going, hey guys, we all have to leave because it's going to be too much for Myles. They go, hey, it's too busy and loud in there for me. And we're like, oh, okay. By being able to do that, other people are going, you know what? I kind of get that too. I don't like it when it's that busy or that loud or too much going on. And then they can go, okay. And that way I'm normalizing it, right? So what I always say is that by starting to go to these conferences and learn about FASD and starting to really be self-aware of how things were going for me and what experiences I was having, this helped me understand my diagnosis. So I always say, once I knew, understood, and became accepting of my diagnosis, then I knew, understood, and became accepting of myself. Because now I could take away the lazy, that name tag, I could take that off and realize that that bubble trouble we talked about earlier and the sensory issues that we talked about, when I go to bed at night, there's no off switch for the bubbles. So my body's constantly moving. There's times where my legs will be straight up in the air and I'm sleeping. I'll be moving around, tossing and turning. And then think about if you have heightened sensory issues, what about the pillow? What about the pillowcase? What about the sheets? What about the blankets? What about that little bit of air that's whistling through the window? What about that little ray of light that's coming in? What about all of these things that you're supposed to sit there, you're supposed to lay there, and they're tapping you going, hello, hey, hello, hello, have a good sleep. How are you sleeping? Are you sleeping? Oh, I hope you have a really good sleep. I hope you get a lot of good rest. Meanwhile, your bubble trouble's going, I'm supposed to get up the next day, just like everyone else who actually got to sleep and rest, and my brain and my body is supposed to work the same. It doesn't. I had the opportunity to meet with a doctor that was able to prescribe me some medication at the time. And I remember how much it actually helped me sleep. I didn't get a full sleep, but it helped a lot. And I remember waking up and going, oh my goodness, here I was in my 30s. And I go, I could go to a Starbucks and have a conversation with somebody. I could open a book and kind of remember and understand what I read, because I actually got some rest and I got some sleep. Again, it was two sides where one side was going, this is awesome. Oh my goodness, so exciting. And then another side going, wow, what a loss. All those years in school, I wasn't able to connect things, get things going, and my brain waking up and going till after lunch. And I missed out on so much because of something that wasn't a choice of mine. Wasn't, you know, I didn't stay up late like people thought, right? I wasn't just not listening like people thought. I was able to take away things like, you're a liar, right? When in actuality, what I found is that in my head, I would take stories or events of things and put them together, and I honestly believed them. And that's called confabulation. So when I said that, oh man, it's so awesome, that I was on the Harry Potter ride this last weekend, and it's so cool because I bought like I had my wand and my hat and everything like that, and I swear I made it stop when I waved my wand. And then my neighbor's going, "What are you talking about? I saw you playing out front of your house." Now, I am going to Disneyland in 2 weeks, and that weekend I saw the commercial for the new Harry Potter ride that's opening up. My parents that weekend surprised me and bought me a whole Harry Potter outfit. So did I have an outfit? Was there a Harry Potter ride? Am I going to Disneyland? Yep, yep, yep. All those pieces fit together, and this is my story. And I honestly believe it until I'm able to maybe sit back and break it down, then maybe I can make sense of it. But now I'm being called a liar. And I'm like, no, I didn't lie. I'm not lying. This really happened. There are times that, like, I still remember walking down a highway and putting my arm out, and an eagle landed on my arm. And I think about it now, I'm like, that's really, I don't know if that could actually really happen. There's a good chance I was walking down a highway. I walked down a lot of highways. There's a good chance I could have seen an eagle. I've seen plenty of eagles. So, but I know in my head, there's a part of me that believes that, and I would have told people that. And now I know in my head that there's a part that goes, how realistic is that? Could have that really happened, right? But I believe it did. So if I were to tell you that, I would not be lying to you. I would be taking information and facts that are put together in my head and giving them to you, right? So being able to take off that label of a liar and be like confabulating, right? Now, when it comes to confabulation, we have to be careful because it's not as simple as going, okay, well, he has FASD, so it's fine if he says this or that. Sometimes you're going to have to stop and deal with things, and sometimes you can let them go, right? If it's, oh my goodness, I saw Mickey Mouse and he was crossing the street. I think I even saw Bambi. Cool. Wow, is Mickey Mouse really big or is he really small? Is there any need to go, oh, seriously, you did not see Mickey Mouse, blah, blah, blah. What does it matter if I did or not? You can let that one go. But if I come to you and I go, oh yeah, this guy picked me up in a van, and then I went to some guy's house and they're in their basement, and there's this other guy there, and I was sitting on his lap, and he's like, oh, if you do this or that, I'll give you some candies. And yeah, it's weird, but yeah, it was okay. So Myles just told us that some stranger maybe picked him up in a van and he was sitting on some guy's lap and he gave him candies. You might want to follow up on that. They call home and find out that, oh yeah, Myles' uncle was in town. And because of Myles' sensory issues and everything, he's not able to go to the mall to see Santa for Christmas. So his uncle's friend dressed up as Santa, and his uncle picked him up to surprise him. And they went, and he got to sit on Santa's lap and get some candy and presents. Oh, okay. So now you've checked everything's okay. But in that instance, you do need to check the facts, you know, and you can even ask the individual and be like, so what did the van look like? You've never seen that guy before? Or do you remember what his hair looked like? Do you remember, you know, those kind of things to check to see, is this something I need to follow up on? Or is this something that I can just go, hey, cool. Because I can tell you right now that you're going to have plenty of time to be stressed out about things. You're going to have plenty of opportunities to be pulling your hair out going, oh my goodness, why are we having to deal with this again? So take those times that you don't need to make a big deal out of it and just go, hey, that's pretty cool. Mickey Mouse. I've always wondered if he's really tall or short, or, you know, like, does he have a big smile? What is he like? You know? Again, being able to take off that I'm a liar, putting on the confabulation and going, oh, okay, so that's what that is, right? So being able to understand too that the developmental versus chronological thing is something that's very common. And quite often we'll see that that may not level out until maybe late 20s, early 30s sometimes. So understanding how do we support an individual at where they're at. If I'm 16 years old, but developmentally in some areas, maybe I'm 18. In some areas, maybe I'm 13. Maybe in some areas, I'm 8. As a 16-year-old, I don't want you coming up to me going, okay, little buddy, all right, we're going to put our shoes away because we want to be able to find our shoes, right? So make sure we put them away on the boot rack. On the what rack? On the boot rack. No, I don't want you talking to me like that, right? Do I have to put my shoes away because I always forget? Yep. You want to come help me with that? Sure. You want to say something? Sure. But still have that respect and understanding that speak to me like I'm a 16-year-old, right? But support me in the ways that I need to be supported and at the age I'm at, right? So if developmentally I'm 8, then support me like you would an 8-year-old. Have the patience with me that you would an 8-year-old. Have the expectations that you would of an 8-year-old for that circumstance. But you have to remember that sometimes when we're looking, our reading might be that of a 13-year-old, but our writing is that of an 8-year-old. But our expressive language is that of a 20-year-old. So we can really talk the words and say the things, but we may not fully understand exactly what we're saying, right? So understanding that developmental versus chronological, right? That difference there, right? So these things that I've learned were for me to be able to go, okay, so what was really going on here, right? When I look back at the example of I threw the rock at that kid's head in grade 1, I ended up getting sent home and suspended. And I'm at home dealing with the consequences for my actions. And that happened within an hour and a half. Then fast forward to, I didn't do my homework and now I'm sitting in detention for something I didn't do 24 hours ago. Then fast forward to now I am this young adult on the street and I get arrested and charged with, say, possession of drugs. Do I go to court in an hour and a half? Nope. Do I go to court in 24 hours? Not usually. Go to court in 3, 6, 8, 12 months later. If I don't understand the consequences for my actions when they happen an hour and a half later, or if I don't understand them 24 hours later, do you think if I can remember to show up and I do it on time, do you think if I show up to court 6, 8, 12 months later, I'm really remembering and understanding why I'm there? Am I really going to learn from this? No, right? So it's understanding how do we help understand what's going on? How do we help understand what the cause and effect is, the consequences for actions, right? One of the best ways is that relationship. I'm going to have teachers tell me that I'm not good enough, and I'm going to have authority figures telling me that I'm not good enough, and society is going to look down on me. I'm going to have all these people looking down at me, telling me what I'm doing wrong. If I could have a friend or somebody acknowledge what I'm doing right, my ears will be a lot more open to hear how I can change other things. And given the opportunity, I might be able to say to you, I wish I could just do my homework at school. Oh, that's a great idea. Let's see if that's an option. But if nobody gives me that opportunity, then I can't use my voice. If nobody says it's okay to use my voice, then I'll never believe it is. So understanding that, as I said earlier about, sometimes I was waiting for the other shoe to fall, right? And I ended up being able to go back to that counselor years later and I just want to say thank you to him, right? For a lot of the things that he did and helped me with. And he said, whatever happened to, you're waiting for the other shoe to fall off, right? And I said to him, the other shoe never fell off. The laces came loose sometimes, but I just stopped and tied them back up and kept going. There's going to be times in your life where, the laces are going to come loose and it's going to be hard to, deal with certain things in life. But it's a matter of, if you stop, tie them back up and keep going. Every time I fell down, I got back up. And that's what I had to look at, was all the times I got back up. Society will look at FASD and say, you have FASD, you're a victim who suffers. You won't be able to do this, do this, do this, do that. Society looks at FASD and causes the shame and blame and the stigma on the birth moms. I can tell you, though I never got the opportunity to meet my mom, through the records and the paperwork that I did get, the very little bit that I did get, it said when I went home before my adoption that my mom would hold me during the hour visit and just hold me and rock me. What I ended up finding out was that my mom was a young teenager when she had children, that she had a grade 6 education, that she had just moved from the reserve, and that she was not supported, was not able to speak much English, spoke mostly Cree, and the only support she had coming into her home at that time were the ones coming in and taking her babies away. When she got pregnant, did she know the effects of alcohol? Maybe, maybe not. We still don't know how much at what time causes what. We know certain facial features at certain times on certain days. Yeah, we know that. But through some of the research that we've done and a health study that I was a co-author on, we understand that it affects the whole body. So understanding FASD is a whole body diagnosis. And that's how we talk about it, is a whole body diagnosis affecting the bones, the muscles, the tissues, the joints. I myself am 42, but since I've been 12 or so, I've had osteoarthritis, I have hip dysplasia, scoliosis, a number of different health issues. When my mother was pregnant with us and the people around her, like my dad and the other bikers, do you think they stopped and said, oh, well, you know what, Shirley's pregnant, we better stop drinking and doing drugs? No, the environment around her wasn't one of support. Could my mom give me clothes, food, healthy environment, shelter? No. But did my mom hold and love me? 100%. It even said that the court hearings were delayed because she would come to the court to fight for me. She didn't have a place to live, she didn't have food, she didn't have money, but she found a way to get to the court to say, that's my baby. This is understanding that my mom loves me and I love my mom. There's no shame and blame there. If my mom didn't drink, would have I had the same experiences? Would have I had the same struggles? Maybe, maybe not. But by going and saying, well, you should be shamed and blamed for this, blah, 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 by leaving my mom unsupported, society would have left me unsupported, and they did. That's why I do the work I do, is for people to understand that you need to support those mothers and help them. You need to support us individuals with FASD and help us, and not just leave us, right? You can't just go, well, what are we going to do? And even in our own field, there's so much work focused on prevention. I can tell you, and I've talked with many other colleagues and friends with FASD, and it's like, okay, why are we focusing on, we want a future without them? Well, that's not cool. We're here. You deserve respect. For a long time, I was known, oh, that's that FASD guy, you know, and I took that and I was like, oh, that's cool. But then I realized, no, I'm so much more. I have FASD, but it's not who I am, right? I was able to get to a point in my life where I had healthy friends, have my own house. I ended up meeting a young lady. We got married, and we have a 2.5-year-old daughter. I can tell you, the day that my daughter was born, and I looked down at her, and I held her, and I looked down at her to say to her, you're safe. I'm not going anywhere. I got you. She looked right into my eyes, and without saying a word, she told me, "You're safe. I'm not going anywhere. I got you." I have to be careful when I say this because I said this at a school, and there was a bunch of, I was at junior high, and it was a bunch of 14, 15-year-old girls. And I said, if you ever want to get over attachment disorder, go have a baby. Yeah, so I kind of got in trouble for that one. But the attachment and love I have for my daughter will never be questioned. Will never be something that I wonder about if she's going to leave me, because she's in my heart. She is my heart, right? And there's even things out there that people with FASD can't parent. Nobody's the same. Nobody with FASD is the same. And if you want to talk about can't parent, I can parent. I took my baby out when she was 3 months old. I took her on a trip with me. Why could somebody with FASD be a great parent? Because what does a child need? Routine, repetition, consistency. Okay, let's get up. Let's change your bum. Let's put your show on. Let's start your breakfast. Let's do your crafts. Let's do our songs. That same routine and repetition every day helps her, helps me, helps us, right? Though I don't live my life as I'm that FASD guy, I still choose to live my life through FASD. And what I did with that was I changed the acronym from FASD being Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder to how I do choose to live my life. And that is F stands for faith, A stands for ability, S stands for strength, and D stands for determination. Faith, ability, strength, and determination. Faith is knowing that the Creator had a purpose for me. Whether I knew it, see it, or could understand it or not, I had a purpose here. Ability, like my parents taught me, focus on what the ability is, not what the disability. Strength, I had to focus on the things I could do, not the things I couldn't do. I don't work a 9 to 5, and I never will again, because that doesn't work for me. What works for me is doing these Zoom meetings. What works for me is speaking at conferences. What works for me is I do research with the government. What works for me is different types of schedules, because that's where my strength is, right? The determination that no matter what society says, nothing will hold me down as long as I believe in what I'm doing and focus on what I want to do. I still have FASD, and one of the biggest problems I face now is that I'm so well-spoken and I present so well, people say. But what they don't understand is if I don't have that same routine of going to the Costco and going to the same grocery aisles and getting the same food, I won't be able to grocery shop. If I don't still continue to do things with routine and repetition, I struggle. I still struggle with being able to show the correct emotions. I struggle with being able to process things, right? I can't do a timesheet, but it's been held against me because, come on, you can do a timesheet. If you can stand up in front of 500 people and talk, yeah, but that's where my gift is. That's what the Creator has given me, is that gift to share with others. So it sometimes can be very difficult because people look at me and go, you have it all together. And it's like, nope, nobody does. But there's also things that I will continue to struggle with my whole life. I'll always have that FASD. Always had it, I'll always have it, right? But I have so much more to offer than that. As I began this presentation, it was, today is FASD Day, it's a celebration. And for me, it truly, truly is. I know so many people with FASD and we connect, and it was so awesome today. My phone had all these messages on it saying, happy FASD Day, happy FASD Day. You know, and it's like, today is a day of celebration of, look at what society said we couldn't do, what they say we can't do. Look how they say invisible disability. You know what? You don't see us, you really should, because you're missing out, right? Today is a day to acknowledge individuals with FASD. So any of you out there who have FASD, happy FASD Day. To the parents, caregivers, and support workers, and everyone else out there, thank you so much for listening. And I hope that you can take away from this, not just some of the strategies and tools, but also understanding that just being that relationship and that safe place can make a world of difference, right? So Dan, I want to thank you for helping set this up. I know that you and Amy were going back and forth quite a bit on emails of everything, so I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak. I'm gonna put my email and stuff up on the screen, but I think
I did share
okay, it did.
what Amy sent me. Yeah.
Okay. So sorry, did it go up on the screen?
I can do. I'll do that right now.
I'm just sharing my contact information, and this
That?
is, yes, yeah, yes. So it's info@myleshimmelreich.com and www.myleshimmelreich.com. You can check out my website, and also too, there is, oh yeah, that's great. There is a bunch of YouTube videos that I have on the internet if you want to check out those ones. They range from a couple minutes long to a couple hours long. Yeah, and if you're interested in any other information, feel free to send me an email. I can answer some questions that you have, and I'm actually in the midst of starting up my own society and agency. I've worked for many years and found that the understanding and support isn't always there. So I want to be able to be part of making that change. And so I've been working with some friends and colleagues on coming together to start up an agency where we would help empower other individuals with FASD. We would be running mentoring groups and self-advocating groups and learning about FASD through improv. And so learning about the 10 brain domains. And I'll also be putting together learning about the diagnostic part of the diagnosis in a way that makes sense, right? With plain language, walking through the diagnosis with the individual, offering one-on-one mentoring with individuals with FASD, supporting other individuals with FASD. So I'm really looking forward to getting that going, hopefully sooner than later. And we're just looking at trying to find pockets of funding to hire a couple of people on, and then also to figure out, you know, how we'll house it and things like that. So if anyone has any ideas, please feel free to contact me. If anyone out there who has FASD is interested in staying connected, please feel free to shoot me an email and we can connect and see what we could do, whether it be mentoring or whatever it is. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's awesome to be able to do something that shows my strengths, to be able to give what the Creator has given to me to be used to share with others, and to be able to use that sense of purpose that I have. So thank you so much for the time that you've given me and respect to listen and spend your morning with me. With that, I say happy FASD Day, and I pass it back to Ben.
Well, I just want to thank you, Myles. I mean, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it and brought like tears to my eyes. It was, yeah, very emotional. But I just thank you so much for taking the time today, FASD Day, Awareness Day, to come and present for us. It was lovely. And thank you, everybody, for attending. And hopefully, we had a few technical glitches there, but you stuck with it, so it's good. Thank you so much. It was lovely. And I will share Myles's information with you in an email.
What I